any of this quarantining, all right, even if it had been necessary at one point in time, and I don't believe it was necessary at any point in time.
No, I agree with you.
I still say at this stage now, with the vaccines, with the lowering rate of infection, now, of course, everybody's talking about, well, what about the variants? Well, every viral infection goes through mutation, and there is no evidence whatsoever to support the argument that the mutations are worse than the
original virus.
And that's the norm, by the way, when you have these, evolving mutations in viruses. It may be more contagious, but who cares if it's more contagious if you're not really getting sick? And I suspect, if you actually did a testing of the overall population, okay, my guess is that you would probably discover that a whole lot of people out there actually had this illness over the last year and didn't know it.
Well, on top of that, if they tested us for what contagious viruses we carry, they would find hundreds of them in each individual. I mean, there's a reason we wash our hands regularly, and we did it before COVID.
Right.
Because
hopefully we did it.
Well, I'm giving people the benefit of the doubt that, people had a certain level of hygiene that contained most viruses because that's how it spread, is handshakes and so on and things like that. Nobody ever worried about it.
But you see, it's all I've ever looked for, and all I'm looking for now in this whole thing is a little consistency and a little more common sense. Okay, you have people coming into the country. You say to them they have to isolate themselves. But nobody's isolating themselves on the airplanes. Nobody's isolating themselves when if it's safe. Even if I happen to have the illness and I am risking transmitting it to other people, if I don't know I have the illness and I still follow whatever the protocols are, in other words, I socially distance when I go to the grocery store, I'm prudent, I wash my hands and things like that, which I should be doing anyway, I'm wearing a mask, okay? So if all of those measures make it okay for me to go to a grocery store, then why in heaven's name should I have to isolate myself for 4 weeks to prove that I don't have or to demonstrate that I don't have the virus? The whole thing is just, to me, this is the thing that bothers me the most about this whole thing, Nick, is it's just, there's so much inconsistency. There's so much making it up as you go along.
I wonder sometimes.
What's the point of a curfew?
Yeah, I never understood that either.
They still have, so they're opening in Quebec. They're opening restaurants, they're opening stores slowly, but they still have a curfew. I mean, it doesn't make sense.
Well, this strikes me as somebody saying to a bureaucracy, here's what we want to do, go and do it, with no oversight. Nobody looking at what the bureaucracy comes up with and saying in the real world, does this make any sense? And without the oversight, the bureaucrats go crazy, and they come up because each one wants to be the one to justify their existence. I'm being harsh, but I think that when you look at some of the bureaucratic nightmares, take the Phoenix pay system, which to my knowledge is still unresolved. I've never heard anybody say, this Phoenix pay system is all sorted out now.
No, I have the inside information on that, by the way.
Oh.
Yeah, the inside information is?
Yes.
They're not going to fix it.
I'm not surprised because they can't.
They're going to replace it.
Yeah.
They fixed a lot of problems.
Yeah, but they should never have put it into place in the first place.
Well, there was no need for it. It was,
But how many dollars got spent figuring out it was a bad system that was probably best put to death and buried?
Well, no dollars.
Tell that to the people who didn't get paychecks.
Well, but that's my point.
I see.
My point is that when they flicked the switch, it didn't work.
Fair enough.
We didn't have to spend any money studying the problem.
But here's the same group of bureaucrats who were trying to fix the Phoenix pay system, and I'm speaking in general terms now trying to address the COVID issue. Are we surprised it's a dog's breakfast?
Well, that's a difficult question for me to answer. I am a little surprised. I I don't know. I'm a little tongue-tied about it, Nick. I'm of two minds. On the one hand, I shouldn't be surprised, but still, I mean, the magnitude of this boondoggle, this has been such a massive global boondoggle that it is beyond the comprehension of people. And I think that this is why there haven't been, outright rebellions against some of these rules, is because that the whole thing has been so massive that people are just sort of walking around like zombies going, what hit me? What hit me? And they just, you can't it's so big, so humongous, that you can't wrap your mind around it sufficiently to be able to take it on.
Well, here's the thing. In a case like that, it would seem to me, and maybe I'm wrong, and I'm willing to be corrected, but the answer is not to worry about it from a global level, worry about it from a national level. Let's solve our own problems and let the world sort it out for themselves.
But even at a national level, it's so huge.
Yeah, granted.
Listen, province, Ontario has fundamentally different reactions to this than Quebec. And then you have the Atlantic Canada, the maritime provinces, and then you have BC doing something totally different.
You want to talk about a mess.
So it's just a total, the exact term that you used is the right term. It's a dog's breakfast. And, you have to live on a farm and have a half-wild dog to understand what a dog's breakfast is.
Whatever falls to the floor.
Okay. So what's happening is you're having individuals who are rebelling against the individual things that are going on.
Right.
And hence somebody flies in from, I was reading about this nurse who's been volunteering for the last year in Tanzania. Okay. Flies in. They have no measures against COVID whatsoever in Tanzania. No masks, no vaccinations, no social distancing, nothing. She's been a nurse working there on other illnesses.
Yeah.
Okay, she comes here and all of a sudden people are yelling at her at the airport. You have to wear a mask and you have to quarantine. And she basically says, F you. Off I go. And of course, they can't stop her, right? So we'll see what the outcome of that is. But, here's another troubling, I'm looking at the time here, but here's a very serious problem. Okay, we're laughing about what's going on at the airport, but look at this pastor in Alberta.
Yeah, no kidding. Pastor Gray, I think his name is.
I can't remember his name, but just outside of Edmonton, who is in jail because he refused to stop shut his church and bar his congregants from holding services. Now the Canadian Centre for Constitutional Justice, or whatever they call themselves, which is another constitutional group based in Calgary, have taken that case on. But can you imagine in Canada that we're doing this kind of thing? People tobogganing, kids tobogganing, that their parents are being fined $800 or $900, and then we were talking a few weeks ago about this family in Okotoks that had the toboggan hill. A toboggan hill that they put on their own front lawn, and some neighbor called up the local authorities and said, I don't know, I think it's not safe. Those two kids are out there tobogganing and they're close to one another. Okay, well, look, they could be sharing a bath together. They're young boys or whatever, young kids, okay? Nobody knows or cares about that, but they're tobogganing close together. So the family goes away, comes back. What has the local government done? They've sent out some
heavy equipment and taken out.
And they've destroyed the toboggan.
Destroy it. They didn't just destroy it. They took away all the snow so they couldn't rebuild it.
I mean, it's, oh my goodness gracious.
But on top of that, Joseph, as crazy as that all is, I was listening to terrestrial radio today, and in Toronto, now you and I have talked about this before, and I just got to throw this in the pile. Because if it was a good idea now, why wasn't it a good idea a year ago? They are building a 100-bed field hospital in the parking lot of Sunnybrook Hospital in Toronto, in the same facility. So the doctors only have to walk out the door to the facility to treat people, overflow cases of COVID and other maladies. Where was this 6 months, 8 months, 10 months ago?
Well, we were calling for it.
I know. That's my point.
We were saying.
And now they bring it in?
If you're worried about the hospital being overwhelmed, keep everything open. Don't bother the people who are not suffering significantly from this illness. Let businesses stay open. And if you're worried about overrunning the hospital with COVID cases, then expand on a temporary basis the facilities of the hospital. So now they're doing it. And I would like to take credit for it, but I don't know. Maybe we should.
Well, we will. Because we were one of the first ones to point this out that I know of in mainstream media. And it was Pastor James Coates of the Grace, I forget the name of the church, but it was an evangelical church.
So he's still being held.
He's held till his trial in May.
It's unbelievable.
Because he told the government to go take a flying leap off a very tall cliff, because he thought that from his perspective, that going without spiritual guidance was far more dangerous than going without social distancing.
Right.
And you know what? I'm finding it hard to argue with him.
Well,
souls last forever.
Show me the evidence that what they were doing in his church was unsafe and that there was an outbreak of COVID-19.
Yeah, don't you actually have to have evidence to support the fact that there's been damage done? Like
you would think that there would be that requirement.
If somebody accused you of robbing a bank, don't you think they should go looking for the gun you used? The cash you took?
You would think that there would have to be some requirement. And, what I'm saying now is it's people like us and our listeners out there in Canada or around the world. If you're tired of this, you have to start speaking up. And, I just want to reiterate, Nick, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't think that this is a conspiracy for, master conspiracy to impose one world government on us. Okay, I don't buy into all of that stuff. But for me, there's some common sense here. And if we private citizens are not prepared to speak up when our fellow citizens are being wrongly accused and wrongly oppressed, okay, and when the government is overreaching and it's over empowering or overpowering people wrongly and abusing people, we have to speak up. And there are people out there that are going to go, you're not wearing masks. Okay, well, I do wear a mask, but if the guy next to me is not wearing a mask, leave him alone. Like, you don't know what he's doing. You don't know his situation. Maybe he or she or whoever, maybe they can't wear a mask. Give people the benefit of the doubt. It's like this whole kind of thing doesn't bring us closer together. In some cases it does, but in other people, it really exposes their lack of humanity.
It does. And going back to Pastor Coates, apparently, and I'm looking at the chat room, getting my information from there, Chris and Doug and others are saying, yes, it is Pastor Jim Coates that is the person involved here. He's in jail. They will release him if he promises not to have any more church services. Well, if I'm Pastor Jim, then I'm staying in jail, because that's one promise I would not make. I mean, it's funny because when people demonstrate courage, the vast majority of those around them call them all kinds of names. Look at Randy Hillier down in Lanark County. Okay, he's been called all kinds of things. I went on Facebook and said he was a hero for standing up for what he believed in. Well, you'd have thought I was promoting Hitler or Satan or something. Holy mackerel, man, this is a very mild virus. And, if you go to different news websites, the one I use on occasion is called Port.com. And at the top of the page in the left-hand corner, they list the number of people infected in the country, the number of people recovered, and the number of people who have died. And the number of people who have died is less than 2,000. But the number of people recovered is like 820, almost 830, right. 830,000.
Right.
Why don't they talk about that number?
Well, we should. We should maybe start posting that on a daily basis on our web page or on our Facebook page.
That matters a lot more. All right. With that said, I think, Joseph, looking at the clock here, it's time for us to take our first break. If you're listening to the podcast, then thanks for sticking with us for the first half hour. You're listening live.